Now that we have established some context around what healthy eating habits look like and how eating disorders can be devastating to one's well-being, it's finally time to talk about the process of recovery. My last guest is Stephanie Jones. She is a licensed clinical social worker, receiving her master's degree in social work from the University of North Carolina, in addition to a bachelor's in psychology. She's worked around the United States with eating disorder patients to develop healthier coping skills. Working as a therapist at Duke University Medical Center, the UNC Department of Psychiatry, the Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital, and the Huntington Mental Health Institute. Stephanie Jones is trained in cognitive behavioral therapy, dialectical behavior therapy, and mindfulness-based interventions. So I guess I want to start it off with kind of a general overview of eating disorders. What are some factors that can lead to the development of an eating disorder?
Yeah, there's a lot of different factors that can lead to development of an eating disorder. And it generally, you can think of it as a maladaptive coping skill. So if someone doesn't have other coping skills, they may rely on that one. And it can be a lot of different factors that go into play. So sometimes trauma, history of trauma, a lot of times personality traits. So like high achieving, people pleasing, observant, can kind of lead to that too.
Yeah, it's interesting that there's kind of a flip side to traits that, you would often associate with being positive.
Yeah.
Would you say a lot of that is kind of an aspect of needing control or organization in people's lives?
Yeah, that can definitely be a piece. More for like ARFID or anorexia, those will pop up. There's also sometimes when people have very chaotic environment going on or chaotic lives, then they may want that control or try for that control, but it's really hard to maintain that, so may develop things like bulimia or binge eating, may mimic more that kind of chaos, if that
Right.
makes sense.
More seeking comfort there.
Yeah, emotional regulation, so it can go either way.
And remind me, ARFID is avoidant restrictive food intake disorder?
Yep, you got it.
Perfect. What is kind of a common misconception or something that you wish people knew about eating disorders?
Yeah, it gets dubbed as a female disorder, right? A lot of the time, kind of the standard thing people think of as like a white upper middle class women, which is just not accurate. A lot of the research was done on that population historically, but it affects all populations. Sometimes it may look a little different, but because there's a lot of different eating disorders that can affect any population. Currently, there's a lot of more men are feeling more comfortable, I believe, to recognize that and get treatment for eating disorders. So we're seeing a rise in men reporting eating disorder behaviors. But yeah, the way that the diagnostic information is written is sometimes hard for them to get the actual diagnosis. So it's not showing up in studies or in like showing that they have that. They don't meet the low BMI just because of how their men's bodies are different. But it's still showing up when you look at all the behaviors as having an eating disorder. Like orthorexia, where it's more about like really clean eating or exercise, hitting the gym for like 4 hours a day kind of thing. But so yeah, that's a very big misconception.
I think there's a lot of misconception about like terminology around eating disorders too, because like you said, it's so hard to describe, even pinpoint what is an eating disorder. I mean, how do you meet that criteria? And there's a lot of exceptions to it, and language like referring to people with eating disorders as exclusively anorexic, and then you're taking the power away from the person and kind of making them into the disorder in a way. And like I said, it's so broad. I mean, you can't define every eating disorder as an anorexic. What does recovery mean to you? I mean, what is a realistic timeline for recovery?
Yeah,
It's so hard to explain.
It very much depends on the person. I saw it in reading and research one time. They estimated it's a 7-year process, which seems kind of wild.
Mm-hmm.
So there's different levels of recovery, and that 7-year one has to do more with the thoughts quieting and not thinking about those thoughts very often, the eating disorder thoughts. Whereas other parts of recovery can be a lot sooner. So there's weight restoration, may not take that long. That then very much depends on the person. Here in the like a PHP kind of level of program, we typically see people 4 weeks, 8 weeks, 16 weeks in there for that weight restoration piece, but it can really vary.
Mm-hmm.
And then as far as quieting down eating disorder thoughts or food noise, that one can take years.
Mm-hmm.
It gets quieter though, so it just depends on what the person feels like recovery is.
Yeah.
To me, recovery though can be fully recovered. So really not having any more eating disorder thoughts is possible.
Mm-hmm.
So that is a possibility, and it's just a process to get to there.
Yeah, and I think, eating disorders are so individualized, and addressing it can be hard because for some people maybe that's complete hospitalization, and maybe for some people that's realizing that they even have a problem. What are kind of the first steps in recovery that you would recommend?
Yeah, it depends a lot on the behaviors or diagnosis, right? So for someone that has anorexia, it's weight restoration is the first step. Well, identifying that it's going on and that it's maladaptive coping skills, and wanting treatment is first, and then weight restoration is going to be second. While doing weight restoration, you can do kind of cognitive behavioral. Start looking at the thoughts, connecting thoughts and feelings and actions, how that shows up in relationship with food. Others, it's still going to be recognizing that that's something that's going on and something that you want to change. Like with RFID, it's going to be more like exposures to different types of foods and textures, and so that can look very different.
Yes.
And then, with like bulimia or binge eating, there's going to be the same with the identifying it, but it's going to be a little bit different where there may or may not be weight restoration, but you're still kind of looking at getting a structured meal plan and then resisting the urges. So it's more emotional control or emotional regulation that is gonna need to be learned.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. So you said that eating disorders can be caused by feeling a lot of stress, and eating disorders themselves can cause a lot of stress. What are some examples of healthy coping skills to use for stress?
Yeah, there is an anxiety piece for sure to a lot of eating disorders. There's some research thinking, kind of exploring if that's where it comes from. So kind of treating that anxiety and reducing that anxiety and stress is key. Mindfulness is probably key, number one. So different breathing techniques. There's box breathing, where you breathe in for 4, hold for 4, breathe out for 4, hold for 4, and doing that repeatedly for up to a couple minutes can be very helpful. Progressive muscle relaxation can be key. So focusing on different muscle areas, tightening them up as you breathe in, releasing them as you let go, as you breathe out, and moving through each area of your body can really, really help regulate your nervous system and reduce that stress. And then talking to somebody is always key, reaching out, getting social support.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Do you have any tips on making these skills a habit?
Yeah. It's the hardest part.
It's so true.
Routines can really help. So building in mindfulness to parts of your day. So like doing a mindfulness practice for just a few minutes, 2 to 5 minutes in the morning, 2 to 5 minutes in the evening before bed, can do a lot to help. Um, Trying to do check-ins with yourself regularly, like setting an alarm on your phone for a check-in, to then just check in with your body and see how you're doing emotionally, where that's showing up in your body, and then adding in some mindfulness if you're feeling that tension or stress.
Yeah, I like the idea of mindfulness and breathing techniques a lot because I think with eating disorders, you have to be cautious about wellness techniques that you often hear about because I mean, you hear eat clean and exercise regularly, and those are often counterproductive to eating disorders themselves.
Yeah, it's wild with that one because those can be really helpful, and they're actually part of like dialectical behavioral therapy adds them in there. But with eating disorders, yeah, it can become compulsive. And so it's more trying to find the other things of like what movement do you enjoy, and that's less intense. That can be really stress relieving.
Yeah.
And lean into that instead of that like
right
eating only organic and working out, going to the gym for an hour every day. Like that can become compulsive.
That is unhealthy itself. Yes. Do you have any media recommendations for those trying to learn more or recover?
Yeah, a few. There's a podcast put out by the Emily Project, which is an eating disorder recovery treatment. I think it's in Ohio. It's called Piecemeal, but it's peace, P-E-A-C-E, meal. That's really great. They have people that have been through treatment that are in recovery or are recovered, so you can kind of hear that it's possible. It's almost like listening to a mentor. Which can be really helpful in just knowing that
it is possible.
Yeah, because sometimes during recovery it feels like it's not. So hearing from others is helpful. And then Lindsay Kite and Lexi Kite that wrote More Than a Body. I believe they have an Instagram account called Redefining Beauty, which is really great. And pretty much anything they put out is really great. They do a lot of pushing back against media and kind of diet culture, and they do a lot of promoting media literacy and how even a lot of Instagram accounts that are put out there by people that are really trying to help in the recovery process may not be helping, because it's still going into that like this beautiful curated life. And so they kind of help people learn how to navigate that and see how much is curated and how the recovery might not look like that precisely for you, and how it can look, and just everything's really well researched. So anything by them is really great.
Yeah, that sounds like an amazing resource, because I think it's so true that when you're looking for information online, it's so easy to fall into diet culture traps or, like you said, Instagram recovery accounts. And there's such a comparative element to eating disorders, and so it's so easy to, look at other people who are going through the same process and compare your life and your body and your recovery process. So yeah, that's really good to know about.
A lot of them will get into that comparative or competitive piece. So yeah, they're great with that one of pushing back.
Through discussion with these professionals, the goal to gain a more comprehensive understanding of eating disorders has not only been met, but surpassed. We've learned that eating disorders can be so variable and isolating in their innate nature, but we've also learned that if you are suffering from an eating disorder, you are never alone. Although it hasn't always been taught this way, professionals now support the idea that recovery is possible. Fueling the body properly is critical to being able to enjoy a long and fulfilling life. Eating disorders are completely destructive, creating catastrophic consequences to mental and physical well-being. They are unique from other mental illnesses and difficult to manage because the disorder actively works to prevent its own treatment. It's never too late to get help. Online resources outlined by Stephanie Jones, such as the Emily Project, are great and accessible ways to continue your own research. The most important takeaway from this podcast series is that hope and healing are real. The human body is an amazing and fascinating vessel that is capable of repairing, growing, and thriving when given proper care. Through this podcast series, I hope you walk away with a renewed perspective on how to nourish, better understand, and find love for your body.